It started when I was a teenager, and I loved to go out hiking. I loved to go up into the mountains and out to the coast. And I literally thought, I'm getting to the age now where I'm going to have to decide what I'm going to do with my life, and I want to be out here, right? So what can I do to be out here? And I racked my brains, and aside from doing Christopher McCandless Into the Wild-like stuff, photography seemed to be one thing that might be able to keep me out there and also keep me living. So I started taking pictures. And it turns out that a good friend of mine who was a teacher at the school where I was going to high school, he was a photographer, and his father was friends with Ansel Adams. And through that connection, just the world opened up to me in a way that just it rarely happens like that. I was very privileged in my early years of photography to work with people like Phil Hyde and Ansel Adams. I even looked up Brett Weston.
When did you begin taking photographs?
Well, it started when I was about 16. I started taking, well, actually a couple of years before that, I just started taking slides when my family and I would go out hiking. And we would have these big slide viewing sessions afterwards. For some reason, the pictures I took seemed to have a nice quality, and people commented on them. It felt good, kind of good, so I kept doing it.
So did you go to college to study photography?
I went to California College of the Arts, and I went there to study with a photographer named Oliver Gagliani, who was doing some fascinating things with technique, beautiful, scrumptious photographs. And I went there to study with him, but he got a Guggenheim Fellowship, and poof, he was gone. So I literally show up at school, and it's like, what, he's not here? Who's going to teach me? And they go, well, we don't know. We don't really have anybody who could teach you anything right now, because I was fairly developed for a high school student. So they had no class for me. I took a drawing class, which just frustrated the crap out of me because I had a highly defined, refined sense of graphics, but no ability to draw that whatsoever. So that was like torture. And then my favorite class was a history class, and then an English class, of which they offered one of each for a 4-year degree. And I thought, this is crazy. I should just get a liberal arts education. And so I transferred all through college. I took photography courses, but some were interesting and some were combative. Instructors want to leave their impression on you, and if they don't see it, sometimes they don't like that. I always loved landscapes, and that's what I wanted to do. And I've done other kinds of photography, but I still keep coming back to landscapes.
You mentioned that you had an aesthetic at this early stage. What does that mean?
I had an idea already of what I wanted my photographs to look like, what it was I was interested in, and that's what I meant by a refined aesthetic. I was doing, well, just like I am now, large format black and white landscape photographs. Those were what captured my imagination whenever I looked at art. It captured my imagination the most. It could take my breath away. And so I emulated that. I aspired towards that. And part of it's technique, but part of it's also just your vision, how you can see these things, or to give the illusion of reality. and you experience it as something that's real. And that collaboration, that meeting of you and the world was absolutely necessary. That's the other thing I love about photography is it requires the world to be part of it. It's a meeting of the world and artists, I guess.
You speak of a time in your life, around 16 and 17. You begin to develop this aesthetic and a sense of what you want to do. I don't know if that's changed over time, but if so, I'd like to hear more about that.
It's funny, sometimes I'll go through my old negatives and find photographs that pop out at me that I took when I was 17, some with gorgeous lines, and I think, oh my God, I haven't gotten any better. 30 years down the train, but in some ways that's true, My sense of what I like was already there. It's like it just leaped out fully formed, kind of. And yeah, those photographs are as good as anything I've done these days, I think.
When you go to a location, well, first of all, how do you find your locations?
I'll just wander until I follow the land. Especially if I'm out hiking, I'll follow it. And if it's a landscape like the North Cascades that I know pretty well, I have some idea of what I think makes that landscape unique. That interests me because I want to get at something that's specific to the places that I photograph. And if there's a gesture of a tree or a kind of rock formation or a snow formation that I think would epitomize it, I kind of have it sometimes in mind. And invariably when I go out, something else happens. And I completely jettison what I thought I was going to look for and what I was going to find, and I find something else. But maybe equally as unique. And so when I do that, a feeling will come over me when the landscape starts to reach something, when it starts to vibrate in a certain way or starts to happen. And that's when the feeling will come over me. I call it the feeling because it is a specific feeling that feels the same. It signals the fact that I'm in a place that something's happening that's special. And I start looking then. And I start bringing out the camera then, and I start to photograph. When I had a 4x5 camera, it was a slow process, and I figured that it's okay, I compose slowly. And when I moved to a digital camera, I realized I don't compose slowly, I compose really fast, and the digital camera can keep up with that, which was an exciting thing of late. But anyway, the composition starts to happen, and I just start to take photographs.
It sounds like you interact with your environment, that in some way it speaks to you.
Absolutely. Something will call out and grab my attention and won't let me go till it's done with me. It's what it feels like. Until it thinks I've done it some justice.
Well, that begs the question, how do you know when you're finished with a shot?
Well, I guess it's a guess. Usually I'm exhausted. Photograph for as long as I can, And then I need 8 hours sleep and a bowl of Wheaties. Not really. I mean, I'm so intently focused on the thing that I'm photographing that I don't have myself in mind very much, even. I just have this vision that I'm seeing, and then I'm thinking of how it's going to look as a photograph, and then that directs me how I photograph the thing, or whatever's happening.
Tell me about the equipment you're using right now.
Now I'm using a digital camera. It's a Hasselblad. It's a 40 megapixel medium format digital camera. And I love it. I consider it to be the best camera in the world. I love the sharpness of the detail and the richness of the tones and the ability to go large with it. And also I set it up, I probably shouldn't say this, but I set it up like a big point and shoot. So I don't have to mess with anything. I can just look at the image and try to develop that visually and not have to worry about anything else. Like it takes care of the exposure well enough for me, and I focus manually, but everything else is automatic. So yes, I set the aperture, and it then determines how long the shutter should be, and lets me know, so I can deal with water how I want, stuff like that. Because as water moves, the speed of your aperture, your shutter, it makes a huge difference. Like here, that's a half-hour-long exposure. The water there's turned into a fog because it's gone back and forth so many times.
Do you hand-hold the camera? Do you use a tripod?
I keep the ISO as low as it can possibly be so that the detail is as sharp as it can be. And yeah, it requires a tripod for just about everything. Well, anything that requires depth of field or anything like that. So, though I can take it off, if there's enough light, I can take it off of the tripod and put it wide open and shoot as fast as I can. If I can stop motion, then I'll do that.
What I'm curious about is, do you shoot from multiple angles?
Yes, I did. I took only a couple of this because this is a half an hour long exposure. You can only take a couple of those, and you got an hour going there. I'd walk away from the camera because if you bump it, you mess up the exposure. So I'd have to get away from my tripod because I fidget.
After you do an exposure, do you look at it in the back of the camera?
Yeah, I look at them obsessively. On the way home, I look at them in the car. If I get to stop and get something to eat, I take them to the restaurant. I look at them then. It's just pour over them. I go through this whole process too. I watch myself and sort of laugh at myself while I do it too, because I come back and I start looking at them on the little tiny screen and go, that looks great, that looks great. Oh wow, I've really got some really good stuff, And I get home and I look at them on the big screen. That looks bad, that looks bad. I didn't get anything. And then a few days will go by and I go, well, maybe I got this, maybe I got that. Well, okay, I got some stuff. So it follows that curve. Even though I know I'm going to do that, I still can't help thinking that I'm absolutely right every time I make a pronouncement like that. Like, I didn't get anything.
When you're going to shoot, how many images do you normally take?
That was when I was shooting with a 4x5 field camera, and I could take 20 to 25 images in a day, and then I would just be shot. With a digital camera, however, I can take several hundred photographs in a day and still be all right. It all depends on the light. If the light is moving, I've got to do whatever I can as fast as I can to try to capture it. That doesn't leave me the option for trying out different angles. It's get it now while you can. Get the whatever lighting thing is happening while it's happening. If I have the luxury of spending time, I will try different angles, but usually try to refine, not try to come at it a completely different way, but try to enhance what it is that I think is significant about it. So sort of a refined shotgun, if that makes any sense.
Given your emphasis on light, do you have a lot of time to think about what you're going to shoot?
It happens pretty quickly. When I see something quickens inside me, and something goes at a really fast pace inside, and I start to photograph very quickly. It looks instantaneous, but it's not. From my point of view, when I speed up, the world slows down. It's me being attuned to something, but it looks like I'm shooting just very quickly. I get excited and I keep shooting, and I shoot a lot actually. I always think I'm trying to get better, I'm trying to get a better shot. I think I can get it even better, or a little bit like this, even better. So it makes me restless, So when I find something I like to photograph, I do photograph it a lot.
What's the first thing that happens after you come back from a shoot?
Then the argument starts whether I go into my office now or later or the next day. So I often want to go in and start transferring the files to my computer immediately so I can start working on them and see if I got anything at all.
I'm curious, what applications do you use to work on your images?
Well, I have to use a program called Focus with a PH. It's a Hasselblad-specific software that you need to use to get their files out of the camera and out of RAW in the best possible way. So it's a proprietary format, so I have to use that. And then I use Photoshop once I get it out. So.
Making a large format print is expensive. How do you decide which one to print?
If I think the image is worth it, I'll make one really pretty quickly, right away, just so I can see how it's working, and also different kinds of landscapes and light. I got to see right away if it's going to be feasible. Some kinds of images are really hard, like I mentioned, going to the forest around the Carbon River. It's really hard to make a good print from those. I don't know why, but I have to work with the images a lot to make them look anything like I want them to. And you have to test that out, and you have to test it large if you're going to go large, because you miss things if you go small. So yeah, it's expensive. But if it hits, boom, you got a giant print right there, ready to go.
People have begun to use the term photoshopped about an image that's been pushed. Do you do that with yours?
Not so much, not the way they're talking about it. They want to Photoshop somebody in or out of an image, or something giant, a large aspect of it in or out. Mm-hmm. And no, I don't do that. The thing about digital photography that I think is in some ways troublesome is that it starts to erode the illusion of reality that photographs contain. And if it loses that completely, then it's a different medium. So,
how do you reconcile between what the camera sees and what your vision is?
Since what speaks to me is a real event, it necessarily is a real thing that I'm trying to portray. That does not preclude me my having a vision, though. My vision of that real thing is my own. Maybe I'm dodging the question, but I try to do both at the same time. First of all, black and white photography is a bit of an abstraction. That's not real, right there. But it has enough of an aesthetic about it that it still carries that punch of reality to it.
When you look at a subject, in your mind, do you subtract out the color?
I used to do that, but then something happened once when there was a group of images that looked better in color than in black and white. So I thought, oh no. But the thing about digital photography is everything starts as color, and then you turn it to black and white. Whereas it just gives you the luxury of doing it both ways. You can either do it color or black and white. Whereas before, you had to choose your film beforehand. I invariably chose black and white. But now I do some color work, and some of it works better in color. So I got to let it do that, I've got filters you can look through it, and it'll take the color out of a scene, and frame it for you at the same time. So I used to carry one of those religiously around my neck when I photographed. But with the digital and the color now, I don't do that. I just shoot it. And then if it's better as color, it is. If it's better as black and white, I'll just go with whatever it wants to be. Yeah. But you can do even more than desaturate. You can change the values of the color channels. Make the green values lighter or darker. That's great, but it's also like daunting. What do I want to do with this image? I have too many choices.
Some photographers use a method called HDR, high dynamic range, to increase the contrast in an image. I'm wondering if you use this.
No, I don't. And the reason I don't is because it looks funky to me. For the most part, it looks odd. It looks digi. It looks digital somehow. So I don't use it.
Do you think an image should tell a story?
I believe that so strongly I made a movie based on that principle. A feature film, by the way, which was a crazy idea. And it's probably a terrible film, but it sort of worked. It's a film called Avalon. It's a feature film, and I had the idea that if the right images were layered one after the other, the viewer would have an experience, even if it didn't know why. A person could not know why, but still be deeply moved by it. And I think that it kind of works as long as if you're really tired or laid back or stoned or something. If you let the film wash over you, you'll get an experience. If you're too awake or alive or impatient, you'll hate it, because it's a lot of master shots and still frames and stuff. But on a certain level, it kind of works, and on another level, who knows. I sold it to European distribution, and it played at the Sundance Film Festival as well.
How did people respond to the film?
Wild, different extremes. Some people loved it. One person was so upset the way I did something that he had to be restrained. I've never seen that before in a question and answer after showing a film. But so yeah, this guy, he was just like, "Why did you do it that way?" I go, "Well, because I did, But why? He lost it.
Have you thought about making more movies?
Oh, I wanted to make more pictures. It's just, you know, it just didn't happen. It wasn't in the cards. The kind of pictures I wanted to take were too hard to fund, and I was spending all my time trying to get things funded and not making movies like I wanted to. So I quit and came back up here and did still photography. It's a funny thing, you know. I made this film and I sold it to European distribution for distribution company called Janus Films. They're based in Paris. They're owned by two German guys, but they're based in Paris. And I was going to move to Paris and make films, but the landscape changed. A film came out called Room with a View that made a lot of money, and it was an art house picture, and all the studios took notice, and they all opened their own art house wings, like, you know, Disney made Miramax, and that changed the landscape completely. And all the little distributors like Janus went out of business. So poof, you know, the marketplace for my kind of pretentious art films was decimated. So I was told I have to go to LA. And boy, they don't want to make the kind of movies I want to make there. But I tried, you know. I was lying to Nastasia Kinski's agent, I was lying to the studio. I said I had this sign, I had that person sign. And I almost put it all together, and then it didn't work. And then I couldn't stand it anymore. Said, I'm going to go do something I can do, you know, which was still photograph.
You have a lot of images of the Pacific Northwest. Do you limit yourself to photographing there?
Well, I try not to limit my work at all, but invariably it follows what I'm most interested in, what I love the most, and I love the landscapes out here the most. I mean, I'll go to the East Coast and I'll photograph when I'm there. I'll go to New York and I'll photograph when I'm there, but it's not what I love, you know.
It seems that many of your images are of Mount Rainier. Is that one of your favorite spots?
It's a climax kind of landscape. It's an old growth forest that just is primeval. And it's got as much moss and biomass as any rainforest anywhere, but it's a little slightly higher elevation, so it has different trees, different vegetation. I just love it. It's an incredible, primeval, otherworldly, this world kind of place. So.
When you shoot a subject, do you ever think about what the market will want?
No, I really don't. I mean, I know there is a market for fine art, black and white photography, which is what I do, and landscape photography at that. There's a market for it. It's a bit of a niche, but it's definitely established and it's there. That's my audience. So you asked me if I think about the audience. I do, in the sense that I think of taking the picture and really going like, look at that, you know, that's really amazing. So yeah, I have them in mind that way.
How did you gain access to your market and then develop?
I got a lot of attention for it right away. Not the first images I took, which by the way are terrible. In fact, I made a scrapbook. This is to inspire students. I made a scrapbook of my beginning images, which are awful. And so I'll show people, you know, look, don't get discouraged. You know, you can go from this to something better fairly easily. After that point, I had a quick learning period, and all of a sudden my images took on a different quality. I'm not sure why they did that, but they did, and what I was doing with the photograph became clearer. When you first photograph, you know, there's all kinds of things that you're not sure why you're taking the picture necessarily or how it's going to look afterwards, sort of pointing and hoping, which never works, by the way. You really need to know what you want it to look like beforehand to really get a strong image, I believe, except for those few accidents, which everybody can come up with. But yeah, something happened fairly soon, fairly quickly when I started learning photography, and the photographs took on a different kind of quality to them, something more intentional, something more refined, and I started getting attention for that really right away, and that led me to think, well, maybe I can do something with this, you know.
How did you get into galleries?
I got a phone call from Linda Hodges in Seattle, who owns a gallery, a very well-known gallery, and someone had told her about my work and she wanted to see it, so I just was lucky that way. I'd show my work to anybody. I'm a total slut that way. I love showing my work. So I even got a phone call from somebody named Paul Brainerd, and he wanted to see my stuff. And I said, well, okay, you know. I didn't know he was a collector at the time. I was willing to bring all my stuff into Seattle from the island, and car full of stuff, and set it up just to show somebody. I didn't know he was a collector. He turned out to be a big collector, bought 4 of my pieces, but I didn't know that beforehand.
I'm curious, are you able to support yourself with your work?
I kind of support myself with it now, but only it's been taking a long time to get to this sort of almost halfway point, If this is baseball, I'd be on a farm team,
What else did you do to support yourself?
Well, all kinds of stuff, I've done location scouting for motion pictures, the Mac Whisperer on the island. And then I worked here on the island for 15 years at a place called Frontier Publications.
Did your family have any influence over your decision to follow photography as a profession?
No, my family, they didn't have, when I was growing up, they'd look at my report card from school, for instance, and go, okay, you got this and this, you got an A in art, but that doesn't count. They literally would say that, not just act that way. They'd say that doesn't count. What I got from my family was a love of the wilderness and love of adventures. That was an incredible gift that they gave me.
Who started you out in this love of the wilderness?
Well, it was my mother's brother, and his family spurred this throughout our families. It was a tremendous inspiration. It'd be like the first people, for instance, to ever take a raft down the Escalante River, things like that in Utah. They lived in Utah, and so would often go down to the desert there and explore places that, they were some of the first people to ever do it. And so subsequently, some places were so remote. I was on, expeditions that were the first to do something,
In terms of your own work, do you try to do something that no one else has done?
In a sense, I think places like the North Cascades are underrepresented as far as black and white landscape photography goes. And yeah, I want to be the first to photograph those landscapes the way they should be and ought to be. It looks instantaneous, but it's not from my point of view. When I speed up, the world slows down. It's me being attuned to something. Something will call out and grab my attention and won't let me go till it thinks I've done it some justice. About 10 years ago, I got my first symptoms of Parkinson's disease, which was a twinge in my leg at the height of exercising. I was exercising a lot in those days. I was climbing mountains and photographing. The symptoms, however, started to get worse. They started to affect me all the time. It got so bad that on one specific climb, my ankle twisted up, the foot twisted up, and I couldn't put it straight. All my strength, couldn't put my foot straight, and I had to walk out a very long climb, 12 miles in one day. I had to walk out on the side of my foot. I told the people I was with that I twisted my ankle, but the truth was that it was Parkinson's disease. I knew something serious was wrong with me at that point. It was undeniable. You could pass off a twinge as something strange. Maybe you just needed more potassium or something in your diet, but not this. This was a part of my body that was no longer under my control. And it was very painful too, I have to say.
Did the pain occur from the onset of symptoms or from walking on it?
Both. As it occurs, I guess broadly there are two types of Parkinson's. There's the kind that make you shake and the kind that gives you cramps. And I get cramps. And I shake sometimes too. And of course I get the weird movement, the strange movement at times as well. The worst part is the cramping in my foot. My toes and foot will cramp so violently. I just watch them and they go like that. There's nothing I can do about it. I use something called yoga toes, it's a little silicone thing that can sort of keep my foot from hurting itself quite as much. Before I was diagnosed, it got so bad that I could barely walk across a room without my foot cramping and me having to sit down. And it was weird not knowing what was causing it. But finally one time a neurologist said, take some dopamine, which is what you're missing when you have Parkinson's disease. My God, the difference was amazing. It was like I could walk again, I could run again, I could, it gave me a new lease on life. The drugs do that,
Prior to you realizing you had Parkinson's, you had a very active life.
Yeah. I always hiked and recently got into climbing. I got into climbing because I got into taking the mountaineer's course of climbing because I went up with my friend and he fell in a crevasse and I didn't know what to do. I was down on the ice. I stopped his fall and my slide into the hole, and then what? Right? Every time I tried to move or get up, boom, we'd slide farther down, and so I would yell for him and I didn't hear a word, and evidently he was down below yelling at me and I couldn't hear a word, so we couldn't communicate at all. I just had to stand there, sit there, lying out spread eagle on the ground until finally he was able to climb out on his own. That was a very, very scary half an hour because that's how long it took. To underscore the fact that I didn't know what I was doing, in the mountains, really, I have a terrible sense of direction. It's awful. I'll just confidently march off in the wrong direction with people following me, and it's just, finally like, wait, this is the wrong way.
Did you have to go to a number of specialists before learning you had Parkinson's?
No, I think a lot of it was we just didn't want to believe the worst, that it was Parkinson's or something else, like that. I was convinced I had an ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. I went to the neurologist and he says, "Oh, really? You've been reading things on the internet, haven't you?" And I had. So he goes, "Well, let's measure your arms, right? Because when one side starts to wither, and so it's smaller." And he goes, "Well, your arms are exactly the same size. I guess it's not ALS." But I am affected by my Parkinson's disease asymmetrically, which is, I guess, rarer. My left side was much more affected than my right side. Took the dopamine, yes.
And immediately?
Immediately. It was like water in the desert. It was like, oh my God, my body's been missing this. And I can walk again. And I didn't think I'd be able to do anything again, ever. But I can.
Tell me a little bit about how Parkinson's progresses.
The disease steadily gets worse. And to counteract that, usually you take more drugs. The trouble is that the drugs start to cause problems as well as the disease causes problems. So you get more movement, more of the odd movement. It used to be, say, 2-3 years ago, I could hide the fact that I had Parkinson's disease. Most people would never know. But now it's to the point where if something stresses me out, even a good kind of stress, excitement, or sitting down to a meal, will cause me to move in ways that are obviously, sick. So I can't hide it anymore, and that's bad because I don't want to be tied to the disease. I don't want to be known as the person that has Parkinson's disease. So I tried to hide it as long as I could, but I've had to come to grips lately of not being able to hide it, and that's a whole new thing,
What are some of the side effects of the medications you take?
Well, dyskinesia, the movement my arm's doing right now, it's related to Parkinson's, but it's also related to the drugs. It's a strange relationship between the disease and its drug. If you take too much of it, you get the same symptoms as if you hadn't taken any, only different. I will say one thing though, that when I'm on the drugs, I don't get the feeling of despair. A creepy feeling will come over you when you don't have any dopamine, which is you're going to die. You feel like you could die right now, or in 10 minutes. Maybe you'll be dead. I don't know where that dread comes from, but it's a palpable thing. The feeling of despair, though, I've lived through it enough times to to think, well, okay, if I just hang on, I'll be all right,
Is this while you're on the dopamine?
So that's when it's worn off, at least for me. I get that when it's in between doses, for instance, or if I've waited too long. I take the maximum amount possible. That's because of the foot cramping. Yeah. If I don't take enough of it, it tells me, And I'm at the limit, really. I really can't take any more without screwing myself up. And I've been at that limit, I guess, for a couple of years now, which is something in itself to be glad about. After that is something called deep brain stimulation, which they drill a hole in your head and put a battery right here in under your skin. Fun, huh? And then sometimes it just doesn't work, and sometimes you get a disease or you get an infection from having a hole drilled in your head. And then sometimes it works okay,
Haven't you tried different drugs for your Parkinson's?
I was taking another drug, which is a new drug called Compton. It did do something. I mean, it did help with my cramping in my body, but it also, it took away part of my personality, which I didn't realize until I stopped taking it. And then I felt myself sort of return to myself, which just freaked me out. I'm like, where did I go for 7 years? I was taking this drug, I don't know where I went, but I was gone,
You've been doing this work since high school, and now you have this experience. Has this impacted your work?
It made me realize that, I have only a few years left to do this. And any ambition that I wanted to accomplish with this art form, I had to do now. Right now. There's no messing around. There's no time for anything. It's got to be good. You got to do it. Do whatever it takes. Get the equipment you need and make the kind of photographs you want to make, and do it now. And that's what I did. I threw myself into photography headlong. I was obsessive with it. I still am, probably. And though I tell myself I can stop anytime I want. I just don't want to.
So having Parkinson's, has this changed the kind of shoots you want to do?
It hasn't changed the kinds of shoots I want to do. No, I mean, I still want to go to the White Rock Lakes in North Cascades, I still want to do things, like go where I want to go, but probably won't, so, do what I can do. Take a snowmobile to the White Rock Lakes, or whatever. We'll see.
Is there anything else you'd like to say about Parkinson's in your work?
I will say one thing, is that I hope that people look at my work and just see my work. And I do not want them to think that, oh, this is the guy with Parkinson's who did this, I don't want that. The highest compliment I get is when people say that they feel as if they could just walk into it. And then I know that I've done something that worked, and caught something of the place. Tell myself I can stop anytime I want. I just don't want to.